Hey MVPs, Rico Knows here. Going to talk to you guys about win totals again. We're looking at this futures bet for Oklahoma State. Remember, I'm going alphabetical by conference, so go back and watch all the other videos if you want to know the locks, the leans, the value bets. But we're on Oklahoma State, and just so you're aware, when the chart first came out, they had Oklahoma State at 7.5 wins. It is now increased to 8.5 wins. Okay, and to see them going to 8.5 wins, the over is now positive money. It wasn't like this before. I apologize for not getting to this video sooner, because had we jumped on it sooner, we could have taken the over and felt really good about it for 2 units over 7.5 wins. But we're here at 8.5 now, and we have to do the analysis. So let's go look at Oklahoma State last season, beating Central Arkansas, and not by much. They just went out there and kind of played a little vanilla. Beating Arizona State, not by much. And it was a win on the road. It was fine. And then they looked very disappointed against South Alabama. And I think at this moment, at the beginning of the season, I really was thinking about a decision I made and regretting it. You see, before the season started, I had to name coaches on the hot seat. And I had to think outside the box, and I wanted to come up with ideas of who was on the hot seat. And one of the guys that I was coming up with was Mike Gundy. And the reason I said Mike Gundy was on the hot seat was they had a disappointing 2022 season. They lost every significant player that I thought was significant in the transfer portal. And they lost a bunch of players in the transfer portal, and then they backfilled them with guys that just weren't as good. I equated it to somebody who loses a really hot wife and then just finds somebody good enough, but not quite as great as the first wife, right? And I remember I made that video, but the only reason I didn't put Gundy on the hot seat was as I was sitting there, I was like, yo, they're about to win 3 games. They're going to look terrible. They don't have what it takes. They're the type of team that's going to get blown out by South Alabama, as you see here. They don't have a quarterback. They're working through 3 or 4 different guys. And if you go to the stats and you go look, this was early on in the season, and they were letting 3 different quarterbacks play. Gunnar Gundy, Garrett Rangel, and Alan Bowman. And Bowman, being a long time, he looks really awkward first off, but being a long-time quarterback on the bench at Michigan, before that the starter at Texas Tech, but never really moved me, okay? And I knew this offense was going to struggle. They had just lost their leading rusher in the transfer portal. He just transferred to Baylor. I made a video telling you Ollie Gordon's going to be great. He's amazing. I didn't know he was going to be the nation's leader in rushing, but I knew he was better than Jaden Nixon just by looking at tape. If you go back to the previous year, 2022, and you actually look at this team, they lost Spencer Sanders to the transfer portal. I didn't know who they were going to get, and I felt like they weren't getting an equivalent replacement. They lost Dominic Richardson to Baylor. I looked at Ollie Gordon's tape, and I looked at Jaden Nixon's tape, and I said, guys, Ollie Gordon's the next great running back out of Oklahoma State. I watched the tape, and I couldn't believe what I saw. I saw a complete running back. Obviously one that gets DUIs as well. But when I looked at it, I just thought, man, this team has players, but they lost so many players to the transfer portal. They lost J.P. Richardson. They lost Bryson Green. Okay? And they had to make do with what they had. Defensively, they lost some of their leaders in the defense. Mason Cobb hit the portal, right? Jabbar Muhammad hit the portal. He's now at Oregon, right? Went to Washington. There's others. There's some that went to like Tulsa that nobody's talking about. Guys who were like really, really, leaders of the team, and then they took off and bounced on you. But at the end of the day, what happened when I watched this team is they found themselves. They found great coaches, figure it out, and find the best players on the team and get them on the field and give them chances to win. And what happens is you get blown out at South Alabama. There was some really bad injuries that occurred right before this week. I have it over here. If you see it here, Justin Wright, out for the season, okay? He was out for the season early on, and I'm going to talk about him. He suffered an injury against Central Arkansas, needed some surgery, but so did, if you go back and look, so did one of their defensive backs. I'm trying to find it. Okay, Rawls. Rawls underwent surgery that week as well. They just had guys go down with injuries and guys that were significant on the team. And the people they had backfilling just weren't ready for the moment. They weren't ready to step in. And that's why you see this loss to South Alabama the way it is. But the following week, they started getting themselves together. They go on the road, and they lose to Iowa State. We know that's not a bad loss. Iowa State had a very complete offense, had some good players, and it's just unfortunate. That's the type of game they need to win this season, but it wasn't a bad loss. Then they have 2 weeks to prepare. They finally identify their quarterback. They finally start riding Ollie Gordon a little more, and they go ham. And they beat K-State. They beat Kansas. They beat West Virginia. They beat Cincinnati. And then they even impressed me beating Oklahoma. And the reason I couldn't put Mike Gundy on the hot seat, even after losing all the best players in the transfer portal, even after a disappointing 2022 season, the reason I couldn't do it is because I knew that they had November against 3 of the new Big 12 teams. They gave Oklahoma State a gift. They gave them Cincinnati, UCF, Houston, and BYU. They gave them all 4 new teams, all at the end of the season. I was like, oh my God, they're going to win. The only game they're going to lose down here is Oklahoma. That's what I thought before the season. I can't put them on there. I think they're going to do great. And then you see it. They beat Oklahoma. And the one thing they did was they got exhausted emotionally, and they show up against UCF and they didn't show up. They were still celebrating that Oklahoma win. And then you beat your rival, you have this amazing high, and then you come out and you lose 45-3. And it's terrible. But you end the season looking pretty good. Beat Houston, beat BYU in double overtime, lose to Texas in the Big 12 championship, and then do that unthinkable thing and beat a team from the SEC, and no one wants to talk about it. Rico, it was a bowl game. There was a bunch of opt-outs. No. The only opt-outs were people who were transferring or going to the NFL. What you saw in that bowl game are what these teams were, what these teams are. And I believe Oklahoma State is better than Texas A&M right now. I believe Oklahoma State is loaded. They got themselves together. They managed to go on a crazy win streak. They managed the only losses, like when you look at how they lost, that Texas loss, how many teams in America would have lost to Texas at that point in the Big 12 championship? How many teams in America would have lost? 130 teams could not have beaten Texas at that moment of the season. 130. So I don't even get mad that they lost that game. I don't put it on them. So for me, this is the caliber of team they are, even with this win here. And that Texas loss ain't a big deal to me. Not the way I'm looking at this team. This team looks great. And so what you got to look at here, if we go back to 2023, some of the things that'll catch your eye when you watch tape on Oklahoma State, and I've gone back and watched all their games, and Alan Bowman was relied upon an extreme amount. This man threw 501 times. 501 times. And while some people might look at 15 touchdowns and 14 interceptions, and you got to frown upon that, you're like, hey, I want a 2-to-1 ratio. I want a 3-to-1 ratio. Not really. It's kind of misleading. Because anytime they're in the red zone, Ollie Gordon's punching it in. 21 touchdowns. So Ollie Gordon takes away a lot of your touchdowns in the red zone. Ollie Gordon takes away a lot of the touchdowns from the wide receivers. That's why you don't see them getting that many touchdowns through the air. But they pass the ball a significant amount. And for 500 attempts to only have 14 interceptions, I like that. I actually think it's pretty decent. He needs to get it down below 10. But this man threw for 3,400 yards and 60% completion percentage. Everybody's dragging Alan Bowman, but he just came back. This dude's 28 years old or something. He's old enough. He's a substitute teacher. He's something else, bro. That dude's married with 3 kids, has a mortgage. Alan Bowman is mature, been around a long time, knows what he's doing. I think he's going to be great. 3,400 yards, and people are dragging your name. 3,400 yards, and people are saying you ain't shit? Do you guys understand that nationally that's top 25? I think Alan Bowman's a good quarterback, and he proved it. He proved it so much, coach's son had to transfer to Division II. Okay, Alan Bowman's good. Running backs, we already know Ollie Gordon's great, and they rode him on 285 carries. I would expect a similar workload. They can say they're not going to do it, but they don't have anybody else. And I'm going to show you who else they have in the running back room. Obviously, Jaden Nixon hit the transfer portal. He's gone. He was going to go to UMass, but his agent was trying to hustle them out of some money. I'm telling you this right now, firsthand knowledge. I was talking to the NIL manager and decision maker for UMass. I talked to him on Twitter in the DMs, and he said, Rico, this guy's trying to run me for a lot of money. So was Washington out of Buffalo, who ended up at New Mexico. I'm just telling you, these guys are out here fighting for money, and you're asking UMass to pay you, and you ain't all that special. For me, Jaden Nixon is a track athlete. He is fast. His parents were track athletes. That's the way he comes across. Not a natural runner. So he's gone, not a big loss. I'll talk about the rest. CC, as a true freshman, getting some play, actually seeing the field. He'll be third string this year. He'll see some play early on due to injuries. He will get in the field. He's not too remarkable, but he's definitely not bad. He's definitely not bad. He's not the guy you want starting, though, or anything like that. Brennan Presley, he is an all-time great wide receiver in the history of Oklahoma State football. And that's saying something when you hear all the great names they have, all the great players they've had in the past. Brennan Presley, statistically, is comparable to all of them. He really is. This is a young man who didn't lose a single game in high school. Him and Braylon Presley, the Presley brothers, they won everything out of Bixby. Bixby won like 5 or 6 state titles in a row. It was the Presley brothers who won 4 in a row their entire years in high school. I love his brother's game more than him, but obviously Brennan's been able to get more traction, get more playing time from day one, and he looks the part. This young man is a professional. This is your prototypical NFL slot receiver. 5'8", 170, a little undersized. Didn't go pro. He's back. Led the nation in receptions. Only 991 yards. They're just dinking and dunking. He's out there. He is a slant, curl, comeback beast. That's all he's doing. He's not running deep post. He's not stretching the defense by any means. That's what Rashad Owens is doing, and Rashad Owens is back. Okay. Jaden Bray hit the transfer portal. He's gone. I think he went to West Virginia, if I remember correctly. And Deshaun Stribling. I like the kid. I talked about him last year. He transferred from Washington State over to Oklahoma State, and now he's in the starting lineup. You can't be mad about that. That's going to work out just fine for them. Okay, that one's going to be good. I believe Blaine went down to Stephen F. Austin. He's gone. He transferred, went down to the FCS. Good for him. I hope he dominates down there. Shetron is still on the team, and we'll talk about some others. Defensively, Nicholas Martin, still here. Complete stud. Nicholas Martin, the leader of the defense. And I'm telling you, he's the leader of the defense, but for my money, when I show you guys, there's somebody else that I think is the leader of this defense. There is, and I'm going to show it to you guys here in a few. But he obviously is. Trey Rucker's back. Daniels is back. Oliver is, I think Oliver's gone. Benson's gone. Goodlow's back. And Goodlow, what a stud, bro. That's a transfer from Tulsa. Going off the edge, he can play. These are physically developed players that have been around a long time. DJ McKinney transferred to Colorado. The Smith brothers are still, they're not brothers. I call them brothers, but they're not brothers. One's from Oklahoma, one's from Texas. But Cam Smith and Cale Smith are still here. Your starting nose tackle is not Kirkland. It's Colin Clay. But Colin Clay and Kirkland, they're both that's depth right there. Lyric Rawls was injured last year. He will not be injured this year. He can play. And these guys can all do their thing. So, let's go over here, look at their transfers. Who did they get? First guy they went and got was Kobe Hilton. This is a 2-year starter at UTEP coming in. He's coming in because he's familiar with the defense. He actually, he's from South Gwinnett, but he went JUCO first. And when he went to JUCO, I think he played at Neo. I think. And he transferred, and the coaches at his JUCO are now on staff at Oklahoma State. So they went out and got a guy they know. They went out and got a guy they're comfortable with. He can play. He's going to be a starter. Isaiah Glass used to be a starter 2 years ago at Arizona State. Last year, he got injured. He started 3 games, but he was injured. So he redshirted. He's coming back. I think he has 2 years of eligibility left. This is a starting caliber player. And he's depth on this team. I'll talk about it when we get to the depth chart. Tyler Foster coming in to start. Pickerington North. I've been looking at them. Everybody tells me they're perennial power. Their schools produce some amazing players. All their tight ends, if you will. And here you have a guy, I thought he was 6'7", actually. 6'7", 240-ish. Starting tight end at Ohio. Going to come in, be the starter at Oklahoma State. They needed a tight end. They got one. He's not a big passing threat. He's a hand-in-the-dirt type of dude. If you ask me, he's an extra tackle that's kind of athletic and can do things. Obi Ezigibbo, excuse me. I'm trying to get his name right. You guys know I'm terrible with names. But he played at Gannon University. This is a Division II school in Pennsylvania. This is a kid in high school. He was out of, it says Ewing here. I thought he was out of New Jersey. I'm tripping. No, he's out of New Jersey. Don't believe that. I think he's out of New Jersey. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But he played at Gannon. And what's significant about this is a young man who's been in college for 6 years now, 5 years. He did 5 years at Gannon. And Gannon, he didn't start right away. He wasn't like this all-world player down at the Division II level. He's been physically getting developed, just slowly getting developed, earning his keep. And then last year, the thing is, when I went to go look at it and I went to go watch as much film as I could find on this young man, all I found was he was backing up all conference dudes. Like, there was other guys in front of him that were all conference. That's the only reason he wasn't starting. He's good enough. He's good enough to play anywhere, but there was all conference guys in front of him. So he finally got his shot last year. And he finally started, and now he's a super senior because last year he made first team all conference and he ended up having like 8.5 sacks. So he's now a super senior and he's going right into the starting lineup. A lot of this has to do with his familiarity with Brian Nardo's defense. Brian Nardo, defensive coordinator. Oh, by the way, he used to be the defensive coordinator at Gannon University. So he recruited this young man, knows all about him. He brought in one of his guys from 2 years ago. So it's pretty neat to see Obi get his shot on the team. AJ Green, speed demon, was initially going to go to Tulsa. Then he flips. This is Arkansas backup running back for the last couple of years. He's been backing up Rocket Sanders. That's Liberty defensive back. But Raheem Sanders, Rocket Sanders, was the starting running back for Arkansas. When he goes down with injury, A.J. Green comes in. A.J. Green's a home run threat. Breakaway speed. Unfortunately for him, he's injured. He got injured, and he's going to miss the majority of the season. He might be back for the last month, if that. Okay, Dwayne Lofton fell out of favor at Virginia Tech. A lot of this has to do with Virginia Tech just upgrading their offensive room. So at one point, Dwayne Lofton was getting playing time, and then they got Allie Jennings and Jalen Lane and the kid from Norfolk. They got like 3 receivers in the transfer portal last year, and it really took away the reps from Dwayne Lane. But Lofton, I think it's a bad transfer. I think Oklahoma State has better wide receivers, but they signed him. This gives you like a 4th or 5th wide receiver range. So when I say it's a bad transfer, I don't mean a bad transfer for the school, because they're obviously just trying to improve their best 85. But it's definitely a bad transfer for him individually. Gets him closer to home, but he could have went to North Texas and got a ton of playing time. He's going to Oklahoma State. I don't think that he's going to be utilized. I really don't. You can say what you want, but I think he'll finish the season with less than 10 receptions. Here's Trent Howland. He's 6'3", 230. If you know anything about Trent Howland, go back and watch Indiana tape at the end of the season. The last 2 games. Indiana, the last 2 games, they know they're going to fire Tom Allen. They've had a terrible season. And they start rotating players in, and they find out they have a hulking running back named Trent Howland, and they find out they can win games with this man moving the chains, and he keeps it competitive, and they start playing really well at the end of the season because of Trent Howland. Now, he jumped in the transfer portal back in the winter. This man is 6'3", 240. Jumps in the transfer portal back in the winter and commits to Minnesota. Now, I reached out to him. I made a video, and I talked about it, and I said, hey, man, this is a terrible transfer. Minnesota's running back room is loaded. I don't think you're going to get any playing time. I don't think this is a good move. And sure enough, he pulls out of the transfer portal, goes back to Indiana. Now, Indiana, the new coaching staff brought in 4 running backs, all of them from JMU. They brought in everything they wanted. Kurt Cignetti's not playing. He's bringing in all his guys. So Trent Howland is there. He's working, but he's having to compete for playing time, not knowing the offense, whatever it is. And I still think Trent Howland was the best running back on that team. But once you get a call from Oklahoma State and they say, hey, we know you have 2 years of eligibility left. We got Ollie Gordon for yet another year. We need you to come in and be the backup running back because A.J. Green just went down with an injury, and we don't want to start a redshirt freshman or true sophomore. I think he's a redshirt freshman. The other kid I talked about on the depth chart here, this young man, I'm sorry. I'm bad with names. Sesi Valahi. That kid, we don't want him in the game. We want Trent Howland instead. And sure enough, Trent Howland's here now. And you're going to see a lot of Trent Howland. And it's going to be problems for a lot of teams because Ollie Gordon is not a small back. He's a big, powerful running back. And can you imagine when he gets tired, they bring in a dude who looks like Herschel Walker. They bring in a battering ram at 6'3", 240. They bring in Derrick Henry. Like, they bring in a monster. So I think it's a good 1-2 punch for Oklahoma State. They got to be excited about that running back room right now. Just getting Trent Howland late in the spring like that, pretty cool. And then the last guy they got is Gavin Freeman. Gavin Freeman is a Rico Knows caliber player. He's a Rico Knows kind of player. Former walk-on, former all-time great in the high school. I want to say he went to the same high school as Wes Welker and who's the other guy? Who was it? Not Danny Amendola. Wes Welker and somebody else. He broke all their high school records. So you walk on to Oklahoma, eventually earn your scholarship, eventually look great. He has played a little bit. He is good. I think in 2 years is where you see his real impact. Right around this time, these two receivers they brought in, they're the 4th and 5th guys. I don't think Oklahoma State goes 4th and 5th deep to wide receivers, but more power to them. They got some guys, but it's not a bad get. Okay, talked about everything I wanted to talk about there. No big deal. So let's talk about it when I go to the where is the depth chart? I don't have the depth chart here. I'm sorry, guys. I'm doing this whole thing without showing you guys the depth chart. I never like to do that. So Oklahoma, can I spell? State depth chart. Sorry, I never do this with, behind the scenes. Here's how the sausage is made. All right. So going down this team, obviously, last season they were pretty damn good. They were in the Big 12 championship. Rashad Owens, Stribling, Presley, all returning from last year, and Stretton. But these are the leading receivers on the team, all coming back. They're not missing a beat. Yes, Bray left to West Virginia, but they have all their leading receivers. Their offensive line is all seniors, all been here for a minute. Dalton Cooper actually transferred in last year from Texas State. He's a stud. He's starting down there. He wanted to prove he could be here, and you see it. They have depth because Glass being a backup is insane. That's a Pac-12 caliber starting lineman, and he's not even starting. So they have a really good offensive structure and team. One of the few teams to claim to have a fullback on the depth chart. But what it really comes down to when you look at this team is they brought back everybody. They started everybody. Okay, it's so good. So good. Tyler Foster coming in from Ohio is the new tight end. But they brought back every single starter on offense. And they weren't struggling to score. If you go back and look, they were putting up 30, 40 points, 48, 45 in the heart of the conference. 40, 40, 31. It doesn't matter who they're playing. They had one bad game against UCF. Other than that, and I already told you, injuries and quarterback battles and all this shit was hindering them the first 3 games of the season. They're hard-pressed to be under 21 points in any game, no matter what, even against Texas. They're 21 and over on their points. So when you're doing Oklahoma State overs, or at least their point totals, pay attention to what Vegas does, but they're going to put up at least 21, okay? That's what they're built for. So going back to look at them on the depth chart, we'll go to the defense. Obi's coming in, like I said, a transfer, knows the defensive coordinator. Both nose tackles coming back, great. Seniors everywhere. Team's leading tackler, Nick Martin, here. But, and cool, shout out to Nicholas. Colin Oliver's here. Stud players, okay? Justin Wright, coming back from injury, as long as he's 100%, that's a bad man. Justin Wright is a blue-collar linebacker. Reminds me of a 1980s linebacker. Just a tough son of a bitch. And coming out of high school, probably wanted to go to Oklahoma State, but he went to Tulsa. And I know it doesn't look like it here, but if we go back and we go down here, I've never really checked this, but I'm pretty sure he had over 100 tackles. Let me find him down here. Where is he? There he is, Justin Wright. He was on my list for top transfer players last year. Justin Wright, senior, 101 tackles. You see it, he was ramping up. 82, 101, and then he got injured. This is a man that finds the ball, gets an interception every year, forces fumbles. He just does everything right. He's everywhere. Forgive the pun, Justin Wright is right. Oklahoma State has a great linebacker coming back. Great. And it's fine. It's going to be nice to see him on the field. 6'2", 244. He can stuff the run. In the Big 12, you need linebackers. They got one. They got more than one because obviously Nick Martin is him. These two right here, though, with Colin Oliver being a little younger, but these two right here, some of the best linebackers in America, man. I'm just telling you. Defensively, Corey Black will be starting. Going to fill in. But Lyric Rawls, Trey Rucker, and Kendall Daniels are all elite. And I told you I have Hilton starting, but he's coming in. They have him backing up, apparently. They have him as depth. I have him in the rotation and playing. You know how it is. Defensively, you rotate everybody in. I think they're very deep. I think they have a great starting 11 on both sides of the ball. They look like the better team than a lot of other teams. And you might not like their wide receivers because they're not home run threats, but they're bringing back every single starting wide receiver, just like BYU, just like Baylor. Okay, they're bringing back entire units. Iowa State, entire units intact. All leading receivers from last year. They have no choice but to get better. It's going to happen. Alan Bowman's going to play better. I just think this team is loaded, and they were already beating everyone in the conference. Let's make sure we get that right. They already beat everybody in the conference, all the hardest teams. Yes, they played all the weakest teams at the end, but they beat Oklahoma. The only team they couldn't beat was Texas and a freak accident against UCF. Obviously on the road to Iowa State. But let's go look at 2024 season. So the over-under is now 8.5 wins for Oklahoma State. 8.5 wins. It was 7.5. If you didn't get on it in time, I apologize. But here we are at 8.5. And let me show you what they got, because this shit's laughable, bro. They got South Dakota State and Jackrabbits, 2-time national champs at the FCS level, one of the best teams, in the history of the FCS last year. But their star running back, drafted. Okay? Drafted. Their star 2 offensive linemen, drafted. They lost NFL talent at pivotal positions, and I don't see how they beat Oklahoma State. You don't go from FCS teams and you don't go beat a conference runner-up. You don't do it. You might beat one of these group of 5 schools. You might beat them if you have a superior player that belongs in the NFL, but I don't see it. I think Oklahoma State beats them bad. Bad, especially at home. I think Oklahoma State puts up at least 30 points. Remember, they put up 21 every single game. I don't think they can stop Ollie Gordon. Then you have Arkansas next week. They look a lot better than Arkansas. Arkansas has no wide receiver threats. It's going to be tough. I like Arkansas. Their offense looks fine when they're running the ball. But there's just no way I can believe Arkansas is beating Oklahoma State. Not this team. And that's an SEC team. I know. I just don't see it. So give me those 3 wins right there, because they're beating Tulsa as well. Now they have 2 games back-to-back. One of them's at home and one's on the road. They're playing Utah and Kansas State. The teams that beat Utah and Kansas State are the teams with speedy wide receivers. Speedy wide receivers that can go beat them over the top. I'm talking about like the Missouris of the world. I'm talking about those teams that can just beat them over the top. I don't see that happening. So Oklahoma State doesn't have that, so they're going to be in a coin flip with both those teams. They're going to be in a hell of a game. I would even go as far as saying you could put them down as losing both those games. I got no problem with that. If you said they're going to lose both those games, cool. But I don't know how realistic that is. I don't know if that's true. I think they could split them. But let's just go 2 losses just for the sake of argument. Are they better than West Virginia? I think they're more poised to win right now than West Virginia, and I love West Virginia. I love West Virginia. But one advantage Oklahoma State has over West Virginia is coaching. I believe in Gundy more than Neil Brown. I believe in Oklahoma State's ability to move the chains and be consistent on offense, as opposed to West Virginia, who might waste a series or 2. I love West Virginia. They don't have the same front 7. West Virginia's front 7 is not comparable. Their defense, their secondary is. Love their secondary. Love their offense. They don't have it quite the same. It looks like a tough 3 weeks. Guys, even if they lost these 3 games, they're not ever losing again. They're not losing again. 2 weeks to prepare for BYU. They're beating BYU. They're beating Baylor. They're beating Arizona State. They're beating TCU. It's the easiest schedule I've seen in the country, okay? Easiest schedule I've seen in the country among all these Power 5 so far that I can remember. All wins. 2 weeks to prepare for Texas Tech at home. And then you end the season against Colorado on the road. Yeah, they're not losing to any of those teams. So they're winning 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row. And they're winning the first 3 games of the season. That's your 9 wins. That's what needs to happen. And if you don't think they're beating Arkansas, they're still going to beat one of these teams. They're still going to be one of these teams. I think it's going to be remarkable. Now, yes, every now and then they mess up and they don't win the game that they're supposed to win. It has happened. Freak accidents the last 2 years now. This team looks real. I really like them 9 to 10 wins. I really do. 9 to 10 wins for Oklahoma State. So let me show you guys the chart now. Locks. Pull it up. So obviously, if you jumped on the bet early, which I apologize, never got to the video. Some teams got to wait, and I didn't know they would change their win total. But Oklahoma State's right here at 7.5. It's now 8.5. The only 3 lines have moved. 3 in the conference. 3 lines have moved. 1, 2, and 3. Total 4, 5, six lines have moved so far that I'm tracking from when I made the chart to now. So not a lot of lines moved often, but of those lines that moved, I like the over before. I still like it, and I think you're getting better value for it. This should probably be a value bet, but I believe in it so much, just like the Kansas one, that I'm going over on both of those. Okay? I'm going lock on both of those. I'm not just doing a value bet. So that means I really believe in it, guys. All right? Do what you can handle. Go watch the videos, study what you can, but I want you guys to learn about this team. And what I see is 22 of the very best starters in the Big 12. I see 22 really mature physically good people. Their position groups are legit. They're on point. So your friends don't know, but Rico knows. Hey, just let me know what you guys think. Keep it in the comments, and thank you guys for being MVPs. Sincerely. Go.